In this video, we're going to go over the 7 exceptions to the search warrant requirement. Now, there's more than 7 exceptions, but these are some of the major ones that you're going to see on a day-to-day basis. And as you recall from a previous video, as a general rule, the police need to obtain a search warrant signed by a judge that there's probable cause or there's evidence of a crime found in the place or person to be searched. So here are some of the exceptions, and they're all logical, but the way it has worked out is that there's more exceptions cases and there are actual warrant cases pending in state courts. The first one, and should be the most obvious, is consent. A human being can say, hey, look, I know you need a warrant to search anything, but I've got nothing to hide here, so I give you permission to search my car, to search my home. Now, you really see this in 2 lines of cases. One of them is when the police come to someone's house and they say, hey, look, Andre, I know you're not the suspect here, but you got Joe Bob living with you and we think he's dealing drugs, so we'd like to go and search the place. And I say, hey, that's between you and Joe Bob. I want to have nothing to do with it. And say, look, you can either consent and let us search, or we'll go get a warrant and tear this place up. Well, now I consent and let them search, right? That's a possibility. Another issue that you see is kind of like a trick that the police will do on traffic stops. They'll pull someone over for a routine infraction and they'll say, hey, look, if your driver's license comes back okay, I'm just going to issue you a warning and send you about your way. Do you mind? They're like, oh, no. Like, hey, while I'm out here, you know, we got a lot of drug trafficking. Do you mind if I look in the trunk, look around, make sure everything's cool while we wait for your driver's license information to come back? And people are like, oh, yeah, you can do that. Well, and they probably shouldn't have said that because there's stuff in the trunk. And once you give them consent to search, then they're free to go about their business until you remove the consent. So on consent cases, what you look to is make sure that the consent was freely and voluntarily given, that it's not coercive or the product of duress. The next thing that is very similar is plain view, and that is if the officer sees something, smells something, or hears something, then they will have probable cause to seize. I mean, if you think about it logically, if a police officer observes someone committing a crime, they can go and arrest them for that crime. And so if they're pulling somebody over and they see, you know, a gun or drugs or both on a seat, well, then they can investigate and they can seize that. Okay, that's pretty logical. And so then the issue becomes is whether or not the initial encounter with the police was correct, and also are the police being completely honest with where they saw seeing stuff. The third easiest exception to deal with is what's called abandoned property. The most common example is your trash. You have an expectation right in your of privacy in all of your personal belongings. When you go and throw it away, the law presumes that you do not give a hoot or care at all about any privacy expectation in that stuff any longer because you're getting rid of it. And so what you'll see is if police want to build a case on a drug dealer, they'll go and they'll seize their trash and look for evidence of drug manufacturing, and that is fair game. A second common thing that you will see is if people are standing about while a police car is coming down, they'll throw out the contents of their property, or if they're being pulled over in a car, throw out the contents. That's still considered abandoned property. And the issue in those cases is whether or not the act of abandoning the property was coercive. It's possible that it could have been seen as a forced throwdown. You may be able to suppress the evidence. The fourth exception I want to talk about is the open fields doctrine. This is kind of like a form of plain view and also kind of a form of consent kind of together. And this is generally reserved for people growing stuff in fields, like cultivating marijuana plants or some other type of natural drug substance. You may have an expectation of privacy in your home, but when you put something out in your yard that anyone that's flying over or standing on a roof that's taller than yours can see, you are, in essence, putting it out there in the public. You're putting it out, so you're a bit of a consent, and is then in plain view of someone that has that vantage point. And so what you will see is the police will get in a helicopter, fly over a suspect's home and see what they can observe that way. Another common exception was called a search incident to an arrest. When a human being is arrested, For officer safety, they're going to pat them down, remove all the contents that are on their property for two reasons. One, they don't want to have someone bring a weapon into jail. Second, they don't want someone to bring drugs into jail. And actually, there's three reasons. They also want to document all your personal belongings so there's no allegation the police officer took anything. So you can be arrested for like a bar fight and they pat you down, they find some pills in your pocket. Well, now you have a felony drug case that comes along with that. Now, the search incident to an arrest isn't just limited to the person, it's also can apply to vehicles. As I said in another video, if they are arresting you for a particular crime, when they pull you over, they can then search incident to arrest that vehicle for evidence of that crime. And if they find something else, they find something else. A similar exception to the warrant requirement is called an inventory search. This deals with automobiles mainly. If they are arresting you for some type of crime, and you don't have another person that can lawfully take possession of your car, they have to go and get it towed. Now, they don't want to be liable for any contents reported missing, so they will go through your car, document all the contents that were removed and what's inside. So they'll go through containers, purses, what have you, gym bags. And at this point, they often find narcotics. So that's called an inventory search. It's an exception to the warrant requirement. And the last one, it's a real bit of a gray area. It's exigent circumstances. The law says, hey, look, there's some situations where in the heat of the moment, a police officer just does not have the time to go and get a warrant. How does this happen? Well, if they're in a hot pursuit of somebody, like if they know that someone's committed a crime and they're chasing after them, they run into a building, they can follow after them. Secondly, if they're going to check on somebody because they think they may be a drug dealer, they just want to knock on the door, and then they hear a lot of scuffling, the person may be flushing stuff down the toilet, well, hey, perhaps they may be able to force their way in, although there's an argument that says you can't, but that would be another exception. Or if they're just patrolling and they hear someone say, hey, Johnny, don't shoot me, then they can maybe break their way in to go check on that. So those are 7 major exceptions to the warrant requirement. If you have any questions about that, you can email me. It's Andre@Manasseh and Gill. I'll post that in the link below, and I look forward for hearing from you.